After 2 years of caring for him during his paralysis, he finally recovered. His first act was to propose to the woman who had abandoned him when he needed her most. The media called them inseparable, destined to be together. I stood silently, looking up at the proposal being broadcast on the plaza's giant screen, then dropped the ring from my pocket into a trash can. The debt I owed him was finally paid in full. People on the pedestrian street stopped walking, looking up at the live proposal on the outdoor megascreen. It wasn't just here, every available screen in Riverton displayed the same broadcast. The image was sharp, clear enough to see the faint glint of tears in the leading lady's eyes. The setup was unmistakably Ethan's style. He'd spent months sketching it during his recovery, even personally selecting the fireworks. Back then, he had cupped the back of my neck, his fingertips cool, asking what kind of flower I liked. I'd said, hyacinths. But the screen showed a proposal site engulfed in a passionate sea of roses, and the woman standing there wasn't me. It was Ethan's ex-girlfriend, the celebrity designer Clara. I calmly tilted my head up. The proposal had reached the moment Ethan knelt on one knee. The diamond in the black velvet ring box sparkled like starlight, making the ring in my pocket look like nothing at all. Girls nearby squealed excitedly, Ethan Sterling, CEO of Sterling Corp. That slicked back hair is killer. No wonder they used to call him Riverton's notorious playboy. Looks like the playboy's finally settling down. I heard Clara dropped everything to take care of Ethan during those 2 years he was paralyzed. Such a fairy tale romance, they finally made it. I silently squeezed my wrist, where a faint gray-brown scar remained from caring for Ethan. Back then, Clara had broken up with Ethan and gone to Paris for advanced studies. The surrounding crowd held its breath as the proposal reached its climax. Clara looked down at the young man kneeling before her, choking back tears as she said, "I do." The ring slid onto her ring finger. Ethan stood up and kissed her lips. At that instant, fireworks exploded across Riverton's sky. The scale of it meant not just Riverton, but likely the whole country knew. Then again, that was Ethan's way. When he liked someone, he wanted the whole world to know. The crowd erupted. The girl next to me, completely swept up, grabbed my wrist, suppressing her excitement. They look so perfect together, don't you think? I endured the pain in my wrist and managed a smile. Perfect. Seeing my pale face, she belatedly released my hand, about to apologize, but I had already turned and walked away amidst the clamor. Behind me, the couple on the screen shared a deep kiss, the crowd cheered for their love, and fireworks painted the sky brilliantly. I stopped abruptly beside a trash can. Crouching down for a moment to steady myself, I straightened up and pulled a dull, rather wide ring from my pocket. It wasn't pretty. Thankfully, I no longer needed to keep it. I tossed the ring into the trash, feeling calmer than ever. Not a single tear fell. From now on, what I owed the Sterling family, what I owed Ethan, was all paid back. I was kicked out of Sterling Corporation. I used to have a private office. Now, forget an office, I didn't even have a desk. HR handed me a cardboard box. "Ava, Assistant Ava, all your things are in here." I got along well with people at the company, so she lowered her voice. "Ethan himself ordered your dismissal. The severance package will be generous. Just go quickly." Her tone was diplomatic. I suspected Ethan's actual words were probably for me to get lost. Likely said while leaning back in his chair, casually, without giving me a second thought. I struggled with the heavy box. Passing by my old office, I saw its new purpose. It had been converted into Clara's lounge, scattered with design sketches. Intimate photos of her and Ethan covered the wall where my meticulously planned schedules used to be. I lowered my eyes, my knuckles briefly whitening as I gripped the edge of the box. Then I relaxed. Let it go. I was jostled and fell at the company entrance, the box tumbling, scattering my belongings. The area was packed. Someone's high heel stepped hard on the back of my hand, a sharp, piercing pain. A swarm of reporters and onlookers surged in one direction. Wincing, I looked up just in time to see Clara emerge, arm in arm with a man. She favored red, her dark hair and red dress were striking, but the man beside her was even more dazzling. Ethan disliked crowds, looking slightly annoyed as he turned his head away, yet he meticulously shielded Clara in his arms. Reporters blocked Clara, thrusting microphones forward, firing questions. "Miss Clara, the proposal of the century topic has dominated headlines for a week straight. As the leading lady, what are your thoughts?" Clara beamed. "I'm so fortunate that during the lowest point of his life, the person by his side was always me." Ethan Sterling, born lucky, always at the top, had only known hardship during the 2 years after his car accident paralysis. Friends turned foes, he tasted the world's indifference. Anyone had more right to say that than Clara. She had hopped on a plane and left immediately. Only I remained by Ethan's side. Such a blatant lie, yet Ethan seemed pleased to hear it, offering no correction, even indulging it. Ethan looked down at Clara, his gaze incredibly gentle. Like a wildfire finally contained by a river. Camera flashes flickered, capturing the couple's affectionate gaze for the entertainment reporters. Suddenly, Ethan turned his head, his gaze cutting straight through the crowd to meet my eyes. It was almost icy. I looked back at him quietly, offering a faint smile, feeling strangely light-hearted inside. He instinctively frowned. Actually, I too was fortunate to have been by Ethan's side during those 2 difficult years. My debt was fully repaid. The taxi I called was taking forever. Feeling faint from low blood sugar and a throbbing stomach ache, I crouched by the roadside, clutching my stomach. The hand that had been stepped on was now red, swollen, and bleeding, aching badly. Clara really was special to Ethan. I'd known Ethan for a long time. He was the sterling heir since childhood, countless rumored affairs later, but Clara was the only girlfriend he ever publicly acknowledged. Getting back together made sense. A car horn sounded abruptly in front of me. I instinctively looked up. A black car had stopped. The window slowly rolled down, revealing Ethan's casually handsome face, his knuckles tapping the steering wheel. Stomach acting up again? My eyelashes fluttered. He scoffed, his eyes filled with scorn and disgust. Serves you right. I lowered my eyes. It felt like 2 years ago, his attitude towards me back then. He was just as harsh. He'd said then that someone like me still being alive was a gift. Only now did I understand. All the tenderness he'd shown me later was an act. He was afraid I'd leave, and there'd be no one left to care for him. I decided to ignore him. The click of high heels approached from behind. Clara bypassed me and slipped into the passenger seat, pouting playfully. Ethan, sorry I'm late, those reporters are so persistent. I shouldn't have let you go ahead, you could have helped shield me. As Clara fastened her seatbelt, she glanced over and saw me. Her voice suddenly caught, her face paling slightly. She hurriedly urged, Ethan, let's go, we'll be late for the gala. Ethan frowned almost imperceptibly. I endured the pain, looking up at Ethan, figuring this might be the last time I spoke to him. I saw the engagement broadcast. The venue looked even better than your original sketches. Except for the lack of hyacinths, everything was perfect. I thought for a moment and added, wishing you both a long and happy life together. Ethan stopped smiling. The hand resting on the window frame tightened instantly, veins standing out, as if he hadn't heard a blessing. That hand wore an engagement ring. I lowered my eyes, missing the look Ethan gave me. Clara paused, then said softly, Ethan, it's getting late. Let's not waste time on irrelevant people. A very faint voice came from above me. Ethan said, Ava, don't regret this. He waited a moment, received no answer, then let out a derisive laugh, started the engine, and sped off. I looked up blankly, only catching the tail end of the black car. It reminded me of how he used to race his supercars. Even a blessing, if it came from my mouth, would inexplicably anger Ethan. He was impossible. But I wouldn't regret it. After waiting so long for a taxi, I was starting to resign myself to fate when my phone vibrated. A message popped up, concise, where? I hesitated, then sent my location. Half an hour later, I was sitting stiffly in a business van, holding out my hand while the young man in front of me tended to the wound, his eyes lowered. Noah looked up. Hurts? I tensed up as soon as he moved, shaking my head. Noah lowered his head again and blew gently on my hand. It felt cool. My hand flinched slightly. I widened my eyes and repeated, I said it doesn't hurt. Noah finally released my hand, drawling, didn't hear you. I currently felt like a courtier caught consorting with the enemy. As Ethan's longtime shadow, I knew that 10 out of 11 times Ethan got into a fight, it was with Noah. From schoolyard brawls to boardroom battles, they were eternal rivals. Especially during Ethan's paralysis, Noah had nearly devoured his entire business empire. Although I had no connection to Ethan now, it was hard to shake the old habit. Noah leaned back lazily. There's a gala tonight. I still need a date. I kept my eyes down, the wound now treated. Will Ethan be there? Noah confirmed with a hum. I didn't look at him, taking a long moment before speaking. If you're planning to use me to hurt Ethan, you might be disappointed. He won't care about me. My voice was soft, stating a simple fact. Noah was fiddling with a lighter. A brief flare illuminated his knuckles. He said, that remains to be seen. I turned to watch the cityscape blur past the window, smiling faintly. I remembered Ethan at 17. In front of all his friends, laughing recklessly and contemptuously. He'd said, "Ava? I could never possibly like Ava." While I was having my hair styled and trying on gowns, Noah was present the entire time. He had discerning taste. I tried on over a dozen haute couture gowns before he was satisfied. Honestly, I didn't want to go to the gala, but I couldn't refuse Noah's request. When I left the Sterling house weeks ago, I wasn't allowed to take anything. It was Noah's grandmother who temporarily took me in. So, I tried my best to accommodate whatever Noah wanted. When I tried on a silvery white gown with a skirt like a flowing galaxy, Noah's gaze finally halted, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. "This is the one." I looked at the mirror beside me and suddenly froze. The reflection was both strange and familiar, breathtakingly beautiful. Like the girl who had always quietly stood in Ethan's shadow, so plain, suddenly becoming undeniably radiant. This was a version of myself I had never seen. I reached out, carefully touching the cool mirror surface. Noah stood behind me, a necklace dangling from his fingertips. He tilted his head to fasten it for me, his breath warm, his voice casual. "Ava. I'm not asking you to go to spite them. It's just to let Ethan know he's not just paralyzed, he's blind too." This was my first time attending such a business gala. In all my years beside Ethan, his date was never me. Noah and I arrived relatively late. Just before entering the grand hall, I looked up at Noah. The hall lights momentarily struck his profile, highlighting his sharp jawline, making him look dazzling. Soft gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. I snapped back to reality. "Who's the girl with Noah? They look great together. Doesn't Noah usually come alone?" Someone nearby, who knew Ethan well, stared at me for a moment, then suddenly swore, "Damn, isn't that Ethan's plain little assistant?" The words had barely left his mouth when I heard the distinct sound of a wine glass shattering on the floor. I followed the sound with my eyes. Ethan stood not far away, the red wine glass smashed at his feet, the liquid soaking the hem of Clara's gown. Clara let out a low shriek, but he ignored her, staring fixedly at me, as if seeing me for the first time, slightly stunned. This version of me seemed both stunningly beautiful and utterly foreign to him. Clara looked up, recognized me after a moment, appearing completely incredulous. I nodded politely and began mingling with Noah. Only then did Ethan notice the man beside me. His charming eyes turned cold, inch by inch. He strode towards us, reaching out to pull me away. Noah reacted quickly, blocking his arm and gently guiding me behind him. Ethan looked past Noah, directly at me. "Ava, come here." I had never sided against him before, let alone hidden behind someone else. Whenever he called my name, no matter how far, I would run to him. But things were different now. I didn't retreat a single step. Speaking as calmly and quietly as I always had with him, I said softly, "I've done enough over the years." A midsummer breeze swept in through the window. "Ethan, we're not connected anymore." His face instantly turned deathly pale. Midsummer is a time for encounters. I was a child raised with support from the Sterling family. Not just me, but our entire county had been rebuilt with Mrs. Sterling's help after the earthquake. But I first visited the Sterling home at 15. I was the top scorer in the county's middle school entrance exam that year, accompanying the county officials who brought local specialties to thank Mrs. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling was as gentle as I'd imagined, discussing next year's plans with the adults, constantly interrupted by phone calls, clearly very busy. Standing off to the side, I glimpsed a photo on her desk. The boy in the picture looked about my age, with refined features, looking impatiently at the camera. Arrogant like a prince. The butler suddenly knocked, looking troubled. "Madam, the young master has gone off street racing again." Mrs. Sterling, preoccupied, nodded casually. "Go bring him back." The butler looked extremely hesitant. Apparently, it was a difficult task. An official beside me nudged me forward, chuckling nervously, "Mrs. Sterling, let Ava go along. She gets along well with kids her age." Mrs. Sterling's gaze finally fell on me. I curled my fingers slightly, mustered my courage, and nodded. "I can do it." Even if I couldn't, I had to. I followed the butler to West Mountain Drive where Ethan was. He was only 17 then but already tall and striking. His black and red motorcycle zipped through the wind, braking sharply only when he reached me. He lifted his helmet visor with bony fingers, revealing narrow, languid eyes. He said, "Country bumpkin sister, who are you?" I closed my eyes, my face pale. I thought I was about to be hit. After catching my breath, I managed, "I'm Ava." He looked intrigued. My second sentence, Mrs. Sterling asked me to bring you back. His face instantly hardened. Ethan wasn't one to obey, but I was stubborn too. If he wouldn't leave, I wouldn't either. I waited by the roadside. He completed one lap, saw me. A second lap, saw I was still there. By the third lap, probably feeling embarrassed, he impatiently ditched the bike and led me back. Following behind him, I felt how tall he was. The midsummer evening breeze blew past. I thought of his name. Ethan. Mrs. Sterling wanted someone his age to keep an eye on Ethan, so I stayed, becoming his little shadow, tasked by Mrs. Sterling to watch him and stop him from causing trouble. Ethan, in his rebellious phase, particularly disliked me, seeing me as his mother's spy. He constantly bullied me, but I'd wipe away my tears and keep following him. Eventually, he couldn't be bothered anymore. In Ethan's words, so annoying. Everyone knew that although Ethan had countless flings, there was always a plain, almost invisible girl nearby, who only intervened when he was about to go too far. I studied hard, diligently fulfilled Mrs. Sterling's requests, and dutifully trailed Ethan. For 7 or 8 years. Hiding a secret of my own. The year I finished my college entrance exams, I stood beneath the jacaranda tree. Ethan leaned against the courtyard railing. His words were casual, yet they felt like they instantly seized my heart, exposing my secret. He said, "You like me?" I froze, unable to move for a long time. Jacaranda blossoms fell onto me. It took ages before I heard my own voice, hoarse and strained, "Yes. I like you." Ethan smirked, turned, and walked away. That night, when I went looking for Ethan, just as I pushed open the private room door, I heard the Sterling heir, slumped back on the sofa, laughing with abandon. His voice wasn't loud, but I felt like I was going deaf, hurting everywhere, not just my ears. "Who'd like Ava? I like girls like Clara." That was the first time I heard Clara's name. I was 2 years younger than Ethan. To get into his university sooner, I had even skipped a grade in high school. But in that instant, I suddenly understood that some things couldn't be achieved through sheer effort. 15-year-old Ava, meeting Ethan for the first time, surely wouldn't have imagined that years later, our relationship would still be so strained. Even capable of causing a scene at someone else's gala. Especially since this was Ethan's first public appearance after his recovery. His relationship with Noah was already tense, drawing attention the moment they entered. Now, their confrontation had everyone subtly watching the drama unfold. I tugged on Noah's sleeve, whispering, "Let's go." Ethan's eyelashes trembled. I avoided his gaze. For the first time in all these years, he heard me say "let's go" to someone else while he was present. Long after we walked away, I glanced back. Ethan was still standing there, head bowed, looking fragile and cold, reminiscent of when he first woke up from the car accident 2 years ago, learning his mother, who was in the car with him, had died. Clara, holding her skirt, tried to touch him but froze, startled by the look he gave her when he turned his head. I smiled faintly. Noah raised an eyebrow. "What's funny?" I whispered, just realizing that not everyone can handle it. Not everyone could tolerate Ethan's low moods and spoiled temperament. Not everyone, after seeing that other side of him, would still choose to get close. Especially during his paralysis. Ethan, the golden boy, couldn't accept becoming disabled. He stopped smiling, his spirit vanished. Worse still, his only relative, Mrs. Sterling, died in that same accident. Ethan had lost the will to live then, attempting suicide multiple times. I smashed a glass, grabbed a shard, and slashed my wrist forcefully. "You want to die? Fine, I'll go with you." Ethan had never seen such fierce emotion from me. His dark eyes stared at me for a long time before he promised, almost gritting his teeth, "Ava, I will get better." From then on, he actively cooperated with doctors and treatment. 2 years later, he finally stood up again. And then, he threw away his wheelchair. After the gala, Noah and I returned to his family home. I was incredibly grateful for his grandmother's hospitality during this period. I was also actively preparing my resume, planning to move out as soon as I found a job. Truthfully, Noah and I weren't close. Our interactions usually involved me going to his house to apologize after Ethan fought with him. Noah's grandmother always received me kindly, fanning herself and saying, "Oh, it's nothing, just boys fighting. Come sit, dear." I'd sit there awkwardly for the afternoon, watching her apply liniment for Noah, the afternoon sun spilling across the floor. My guilt would deepen. I never expected that now, in my time of need, it would be the one family offering help. Neither Noah nor I were talkative, making the car ride exceptionally quiet. I felt a bit self-conscious, sitting rigidly like a schoolgirl, afraid to look around, so I stared straight ahead. Then I glanced up and saw Noah in the rearview mirror. He seemed tired, his long-lashed eyes closed. A passing neon light flashed across his face. Noah opened his eyes, sharply catching me looking at him in the mirror. Slightly awkward, but not overly so. I quickly averted my gaze. Noah suddenly chuckled. He said, "Ava, do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? How could I forget?" He'd shouted it right in front of Ethan back then. I nodded, saying, "You asked why I was blind enough to follow Ethan around." Ethan had been so furious he fought him again. Noah shook his head, closing his eyes again. Outside, traffic flowed endlessly. The car remained silent for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, I heard Noah say very softly, "I thought, she's so well behaved." I hadn't visited Mrs. Sterling in a long time. I brought a bouquet of white flowers to the cemetery to see her. Ethan had only recently taken over Sterling Corp when an out-of-control truck crashed into the Sterling's car. Mother and son were inside, one died, one was injured. She was a kind woman. If not for her, who knows where I'd be. I cleared the weeds around her grave and spoke to her gently. "Mrs. Sterling, the charities you cared about are still running smoothly, growing larger every year. The foundation receives so many letters of gratitude annually, they fill an entire room." I lowered my eyes, watching a dewdrop about to fall from a flower. "Ethan's paralysis has healed, he's just like before. Sterling Corp is back on track. He got engaged recently, the media made a huge deal of it, calling the ceremony unprecedented. The bride-to-be is someone you knew, Clara, the girl Ethan brought home once. They seem very happy, everything is heading in a good direction. Only I seem stuck, directionless after all these years." The woman in the tombstone photo looked gentle, as if listening. I touched the photo. "I've resigned from Sterling Corporation. Would you blame me?" She wouldn't answer, of course. Cemeteries are silent, death makes no sound. I covered my face, tears seeping through my fingers. Apart from the very beginning, I hadn't really been happy here. Sometimes I thought, if only I hadn't placed first in the county exam that year, I wouldn't have come here. I cried quietly for a while, then gathered my things to leave. As I stood up, I noticed someone standing not far away, watching me for who knows how long. I lowered my eyes. There was only one path out of the cemetery, leading towards Ethan. He must have come to visit Mrs. Sterling too, just unfortunate timing for us to meet. As I brushed past him, I heard Ethan start, crying at my mom's grave, "You." Before he could utter more scornful words, I turned my head, looked up at him, tears still glistening in the corners of my eyes. Ethan swallowed the rest of his sentence. Actually, my relationship with Ethan wasn't always this bad. His harshness had flared up only twice before, once when I, tired of being his assistant, secretly sent out resumes, which he discovered, infuriating him. The other time, just recently, after he received an email, he threw me out of the Sterling house. Once before the accident, once after. 2 years apart. But I wasn't as hurt as I had been back then. I just looked at him quietly, asking for my past self. "Ethan, just because I never showed my emotions in front of you, did you really think I wouldn't get hurt? Did you really think that no matter how recklessly you behaved, I would always follow you like I did at 15? Ethan pressed his lips together, his eyes dark. His hand by his side clenched and unclenched several times before tightening into a fist. Ethan gave a mocking smirk. He said, "Ava. You can never repay the debt. You killed my mother, what are you pretending for?" Even on the way back, my mind was foggy. Ethan's final words, delivered condescendingly, "That car accident was no accident. Guess who the traitor in the Sterling family was?" An email arrived in my inbox. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was information gathered by Ethan's people. All signs pointed to the car crash being intentional. Mrs. Sterling and Ethan were on their way to sign a major contract. Their movements those few days were top secret, except to me. Only I knew. As Ethan's assistant, raised in the Sterling household, they had always trusted me implicitly. There was a photo inside, showing me meeting with someone from a rival corporation. The timing was sensitive, just before the accident, but the photo was photoshopped, I didn't even know the person. In Ethan's eyes, I was the obvious leak. He hadn't even confronted me directly before condemning me. I gave a bitter smile, curling up in my seat. No wonder. No wonder one day he was sketching proposal plans, and the next he told me to get lost. No wonder he'd rather pursue Clara again than have anything more to do with me. I closed the email, not even attempting a defense, because I knew Ethan wouldn't listen. Actually, if Ethan hadn't stopped there, if he had dug just a little deeper, he would have found out that I wasn't the only one who knew his schedule. So did Clara. I hadn't slept this long in ages. Before Ethan's accident, I had already been secretly applying for new jobs. Because Clara was too aggressive, and I was genuinely tired. She was Ethan's only official girlfriend in all those years, spoiled rotten by him back then, and she particularly couldn't stand me. I had dealt with troublesome women in his life before, but never this intense. Can you imagine a girl in her early 20s being publicly slut-shamed in front of the entire company? Clara did just that. During those days Ethan was negotiating the contract. His and Mrs. Sterling's whereabouts were confidential, even Clara didn't know. She couldn't reach Ethan, but I knew where he was. She asked me, I refused to say, and blocked her from entering the CEO's office. Everyone in the company knew she was Ethan's treasure, yet I was the only one unafraid to stop her. Clara called company staff to watch, then slapped me hard across the face. What did she say? Ava, even if you stripped naked in front of Ethan, he wouldn't look twice. Get out of my way. Do you think desperately clinging to the Sterlings to escape your poor county will make you sore? Following Ethan around constantly, it's disgusting, no different from a mistress. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet under everyone's gaze, I felt stripped bare, utterly humiliated. She stormed into the office, saw Ethan's schedule. The next day, Ethan and his mother had the accident. I had never considered Clara. Because Ethan and Mrs. Sterling had been so good to her. Now I understood. Only those who aren't loved carefully remember kindness, desperately thinking of ways to repay it. I was that kind of person. I woke up to a changed world. The top trending topic on Weibo was #Riverton Sterling car accident conspiracy. Everyone loves wealthy family drama, especially after Ethan's proposal of the century dominated online discussions just recently. An insider revealed that Ethan's accident wasn't an accident at all, but a premeditated attack by a rival corporation. The insider claimed the person who leaked Ethan's whereabouts was his assistant at the time, rumored to be a girl the Sterlings had sponsored for years. Attached was the photo of me seemingly meeting with the rival group, the same one from my email. The exposé was presented as fact, as if witnessed firsthand. Clara responded too. More subdued than before, she smiled gently for the cameras. Ava? I never liked her, but she was always around Ethan. I even argued with Ethan about her before. I truly never expected she could do something like this. The interview was long, subtly painting me as a homewrecker, ungrateful, a typical poor girl turns traitor trope from a soap opera. Ethan stood beside her, expressionless. I glanced at the online comments. After supporting this assistant for so many years, she turns out to be a traitor. I feel so sorry for Mrs. Sterling. Clara had it rough, having to deal with the assistant while dating. Report her to the police. She shouldn't get away with it. Can anyone find out where this woman is? Would any company dare hire her now? Have to say, Clara and Ethan making it through all this is really something. Fairy tale romance. Someone suddenly snatched the phone from my hand. I looked up. Noah was staring at my pale face. Stop looking. Grandma's calling us for dinner. My lips moved slightly. I explained, it wasn't me. Noah didn't even pause. I know. Not just placating me. He truly believed me. Just as the online comments predicted, the interviewers who had seemed interested all declined to hire me. If this stain wasn't cleared, I would likely be socially ostracized forever, unable to find work. This was the outcome Ethan wanted for me, miserable enough, satisfying his anger. Only Noah's family company dared to consider me. I had sent applications everywhere, including theirs. But I refused. Noah tapped my resume, not looking at me, just asking, why? I shook my head. My reputation is terrible right now. Showing up at any company would put it in the spotlight, which wouldn't be good for your family. Noah turned his head, studying me quietly for a moment, then smiled with a hint of resignation. Ava, you're very slow. Slow about what? I stared at him belatedly, but before I could respond, the police arrived to take me away. The Sterlings had filed a report. As a person involved and a suspect in the incident back then, I naturally had to undergo questioning. Before entering the interrogation room, I saw Ethan and Clara. Both their expressions were quite telling. Clara had the look of a gambler going all in. I could understand, she had covered her tracks well over the past 2 years, any evidence likely long gone. The only obstacle between her and Ethan was me. Sending me to jail would secure her position. Not only would the proposal of the century be real, but there might be a wedding of the century next. She would be the envied Mrs. Sterling. Ethan's expression towards me was complicated, his jaw tight. I saw his hand unconsciously rubbing his fingertips, trembling slightly. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, the corners of his eyes red. I withdrew my gaze and entered the interrogation room. Within hours, the police had dissected my entire life. Besides the photo, more evidence pointed towards me, fitting together so coincidentally and tightly it felt like a net designed to trap me. I was temporarily detained, though not for long, just 10 days. Because the Sterling car crash case had generated huge online buzz, conspiracy theories fermented uncontrollably within days. The authorities took it seriously, assembling a large police task force to ensure fairness and thoroughness, leaving no stone unturned. During those 10 days, I thought about nothing. I hadn't rested this well in ages, sleeping deeply for long stretches. On the 10th day, the case was solved. I was released without charge. This time, the wanted list included not only the rival group involved in harming the Sterlings but also added one more name, Clara. Justice prevails. The police cleared my name. The moment I stepped out of the city police headquarters, before I could even take a breath of fresh air, I was blinded by countless camera flashes. Reporters, who had been waiting outside, swarmed me, thrusting microphones in my face, firing questions. Miss Ava, what are your thoughts on Clara being the one who betrayed Sterling Corp? Miss Ava, all these years by Mr. Sterling's side, was it because you liked him? Miss Ava, the person caring for Mr. Sterling during his paralysis wasn't Clara. Who was it? Was it you? I could barely breathe. Thankfully, a hand pulled me away. Noah shoved a bouquet of cleansing flowers into my arms and carefully shielded me as we got into the car. Just as I got in, I turned back. The media lights were a chaotic blur. I saw Ethan standing in the distance, looking exhausted, haggard, and vulnerable. I answered the reporter's last question. I said softly, no, the person by Ethan's side then wasn't me. I had given him up. Long ago. So much happened in those 10 days. Online sentiment, initially demanding my execution, shifted dramatically. The first wave started when someone posted photos of Clara studying in Paris, shattering her fabricated story. Everyone learned she had abandoned Ethan right after his accident. She was living her best life while he endured hardship. Worlds apart. People shipped their love story mainly because of the support during tough times narrative. Realizing it was just a manipulative PR stunt disgusted netizens. The second wave hit when someone leaked the video of Clara slapping me. The footage was clear, showing my humiliation, clutching my swollen cheek while still trying to block Ethan's office, only to be pushed to the ground. Clara, always portrayed as gentle and bright, looked wild, almost savage in the video. Her carefully crafted image as a successful career woman active in reality shows and online shattered instantly. Rumor had it Clara didn't dare answer her phone for days, buried under criticism. More revelations surfaced, a confusing mix of truth and rumor, until the official police statement, I was innocent. Clara was wanted. That announcement was more effective than anything else. Interviewers who had rejected me suddenly reached out again. I refused them all, including the offer from Noah's family. I received a call from my hometown. My old middle school principal, a woman as respectable as Mrs. Sterling, asked if I'd be willing to come back and teach, supporting the county's education. I agreed. I returned to the Sterling house one last time. No one could stop me now. My belongings left behind were still there. I expected the room to be thick with dust, but upon opening the door, it was spotless, bright sunlight falling on freshly cut flowers on the desk. I packed quickly. Finally, opening a drawer, I hesitated. From a hidden compartment, I pulled out a photograph, taken with an older camera. The boy in the photo was vibrant, the evening wind ruffling his hair. He was laughing with friends up ahead but turned back for a moment, as if checking if the person behind him was keeping up. It was a photo I secretly took of Ethan when I was 17. I thought back then, no one could catch the midsummer wind. But I could capture it in a picture. I still didn't take the photo, leaving it on the desk. Whether Ethan kept it or threw it away was his choice. The jacaranda tree in the courtyard was blooming again, its flowers hanging delicately. I stood admiring it for a moment. Ethan stood behind me, suddenly calling my name very softly, Ava. As if afraid to disturb a dream. I turned, smiling peacefully at him. Ethan had dark circles under his eyes, a stubbly chin, that air of arrogant swagger finally completely gone. As the Sterling heir, I had never seen him look so cautious, almost humble. His eyelashes fluttered, his voice hoarse. From the time I was almost recovered, I kept investigating the accident. Until I found clues pointing to you, I couldn't continue. The thought of that evidence made it hurt to breathe. I never thought you would betray us. Once that idea took root, I couldn't stop it. He suddenly laughed self-deprecatingly. You understand, right? People like us, we get betrayed often enough, backstabbing is almost routine. But when it involved you, I couldn't handle it. Do you know what I thought looking at those files? I wished I had just died in that crash. Later, I lost control, did those terrible things. That whole proposal of the century, it was all for you to see. He said a lot, explaining his thought process. But I just looked at him, my eyes clear, interrupting softly, no. Ethan froze. I pursed my lips in a small smile. Actually, when you did it, you already knew you were wrong. But you thought it didn't matter, that it was okay. Right or wrong, whether my betrayal was a misunderstanding or real, no matter what you did, I would forgive you. Honestly, I had always known. If Ethan hadn't been paralyzed, deserted by everyone, he never would have noticed me. His gaze was always fixed on girls like Clara. Even the ring he gave me back then didn't fit properly. He was silent for a long time. I thought it was just shadows from the leaves falling, but it was Ethan's tears. He reached out, clutching my wrist, pleading, I'm a bastard. Just one last time, can you forgive me? The jacaranda tree cast dappled shadows. I thought back, long ago, when I was 17. Ethan leaning against the railing, asking lazily, Ava, you like me? But now, I considered it, then slowly pulled his hand away. I won't forgive you. He saw the gray-brown scar on my wrist. His pupils contracted sharply, lips trembling, unable to utter a word. I spoke patiently, as if soothing a child, Ethan, your life was saved by Mrs. Sterling in that crash. You need to live well. Sterling Corp was her life's work, you need to protect it well. I'm leaving here. Ethan's face turned impossibly white, completely drained of color. In that moment, his heart felt hollowed out. Someone he had taken for granted was leaving him forever. The midsummer wind never turns back. Recently, Riverton had seen dramatic shifts. The couple once celebrated for their proposal of the century were now branded a scumbag and a villainous. Ethan was complicit in Clara's misdeeds. Sterling Corp stock plummeted. Ethan, for reasons unknown, drove his car in a way that broke his own leg, confining him to a wheelchair again. Sitting on the bus back to my county, I received a text from Ethan. It said, I'll repay what I owe you. I indifferently blocked his number. I turned my head to watch the passing scenery, the bus swaying, just like the journey here years ago. The window reflected the person beside me. Noah seemed to love sleeping, now leaning back with his eyes closed. A CEO donating supplies to a middle school was one thing, but insisting on personally escorting them on the same bus as me was another. I couldn't stop him, so I let him come. The bus jolted. Noah's head came to rest on my shoulder, yet he didn't wake up. I pressed my lips together in a small smile. I looked ahead, the scenery changing along the way, but I knew with absolute certainty, I was heading towards my countless summers.